what's happening when it comes to Cardano on a fundamental level? Well, the Cardano Foundation recently answered that question. I'll show it on the screen, I'm not joking, but it's actually in regard with their quite recent collaboration with something called Dune. And no, I'm not talking about Dune the movie, which actually stars Timothée Chalamet and as well as Batista from the WWE. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about a different type of Dune. Dune is an entity that specializes, basically, I would arguably say, on data transparency in a sense. Let me explain why I think this could affect Cardano, because they did highlight, a conversation that was had, right, with Naya Whitaker from something called Dune. Again, I'll talk about why I think this could impact Cardano moving forward, even though I am not telling anyone to do anything and nothing I say is financial advice, it's just my personal review. So if we take a look at it, because of Cardano's collaboration with Dune, what that basically allows for enterprises and all this is that it can actually now contextualize a lot of the data that is had, or that is seen, I should say, when it comes to Cardano, because through Dune, it gives these metrics and these data when it comes to Cardano, which makes it easier for potential enterprises that want to develop or, let's say, work together with Cardano, for builders and developers to actually see the raw data in a transparent way when it comes to Cardano, and also in a more contextualized and easier way, which allows them to make better decisions moving forward. It's like, for instance, let's say we want to buy a car, right? Sometimes you want to see, okay, what's the horsepower? Okay, what is the suspension? We want to see what is the fuel consumption. Or if, let's say, it's an EV, we want to see the range, we want to see the battery capacity, and we sometimes want to see, okay, what's the speed of it? Like, what's the top speed? What's the charging speed and all this? Sometimes we want to see that, right? However, when it comes to a car, usually we can see the list, in a brochure, the salesperson can tell us, or we can ask AI or whatever like that. However, when it comes to, in the case of Cardano and a lot of projects within this space, it's sometimes not that easy to contextualize that data, because sometimes it's not really that accessible, right? So that's why when it comes to Cardano and its collaboration with Dune, it really opened up a lot of, I think, doors when it comes to Cardano, and make it a little bit transparent and easier to kind of understand by developers, builders, and also enterprises and all this. Again, it just makes it easier. So when people like to say nothing's happening when it comes to Cardano, well, there are, but it's just not really things that are going to affect the price or things that sound cool. Again, I think what people mean to say sometimes is that there's nothing that exciting going on when it comes to Cardano, which I kind of agree, because these type of things seem quite boring, especially to, maybe some who are not necessarily long-term fans when it comes to Cardano, or maybe ones who care more so about the price when it comes to data. That's totally understandable. But at the same time, I think these updates do matter, and I think it kind of showcases that Cardano has been doing things behind the scenes. It may not be the coolest, it may not be the flashiest, it may not be the most interesting, it may not affect the price at all, but it's actually improving upon the fundamentals. And I think this is actually quite crucial when it comes to Cardano, because if we think about it, if there is a collaboration that maybe could help allow for builders, developers, and enterprises to care about Cardano moving forward, if there's a collaboration that could hypothetically allow for better adoption, why would that be a bad thing? Because if these enterprises adopt Cardano, if, let's say, builders start building on Cardano, if whatever they build gains traction, that automatically is going to hypothetically bring Cardano along with the ride in some cases, right? So I don't know why this is a bad thing. I mean, sure, it may not show the immediate impacts, but it could matter, especially in the long term. It's like, for instance, let's say someone owns a hotel, right? And for whatever reason, they improve the carpeting, or let's say they improve the lighting. These are small details that are not going to automatically just make the hotel more occupied just because of that update, or that upgrade, I should say, or that renovation. But imagine if, let's say, thousands of people stay in that hotel, they leave and all this, and they start noticing, wow, it feels quite bright here, or it feels quite cool, the lighting, right? Or let's say they notice, wow, the carpeting feels so awesome. Now, these are the small, minute details which could very well allow them to return back there and maybe even recommend it to their friends, or maybe write a good review. Now, that's in the case of a hotel. So it's kind of no different here. Like, these are small improvements. Like this collaboration with Dune is the equivalent of a hotel owner changing the carpeting of the hotel. May not matter on day one, may not matter on day 2, day 3, day 4, may not matter at that time. But if we're talking about throughout multiple months, years, then it could start mattering. So it's kind of no different here, in my opinion. This is like a very small kind of update in the grand scheme of things, but it's one that could matter a lot when it comes to Cardano, at least in my perspective. So, again, some of my friends thought this was very boring, but I kind of thought about it in a different perspective. I thought to myself, if I were to put an analogy again, right, it's kind of like changing the carpeting on a hotel. It may not matter on day one, but it could matter eventually. That's just my perspective. So yeah, when it comes to ADA, the price, it's pretty much kind of the same ever since my last video, so there isn't really much to go off of there. I mean, okay, yeah, it's still over 5 times lower, or should I say over 5 times away than $1, in which case $1 is, like I mentioned before, something that doesn't even seem so tough because, at least in a hypothetical way, let me correct myself there, because again, last year we saw $1 like quite casually, and the all-time high is like $3 approximately. So if we're talking about $1, it's really nothing monumental at all when it comes to Cardano. Really, I mean, it just isn't. But just because we're so low, I mean, this is to the point where if we're taking a look at just ADA in the grand scheme of things, right? I know some people like to say, why do I keep saying that? But it's just a kind of figure of speech to showcase that, what it looks like if we zoom out. So basically, these are levels that we saw back in like 2017, which sounds so ridiculous, right? But this is literally ADA back at 2017 levels. Like levels that were seen nearly a decade ago. I'm not joking. Like these are levels we saw like almost a decade ago, when it comes to ADA. So I'm dollar cost averaging basically approximately once a month, even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything, as of right now, into levels that was seen back in 2017, but is now seen in 2026. So yeah, I mean, am I going to really complain about that? Now, personally, I'm not, but I can't speak on anyone's behalf. But again, seeing that, that's quite like impressive. So again, like 2017 levels right now, like what the, And yet I'm seeing Cardano improve by a whole lot fundamentally. I mean, if we think about it logically speaking, Cardano didn't have this collaboration back then with Dune, right? It just didn't have it. Back in 2017, like how is that even possible? I didn't see a partnership with Cardano and the Brazilian Olympic Committee back in 2017. It didn't exist, back then, right? When it comes to Cardano and its partnership with that. And also on top of that, in terms of Cardano, I didn't see the Van Rossum hard fork happen back in 2017. And the Van Rossum hard fork recently happened, by the way, which brought a lot of security upgrades, I would say. Or should I say just made the security a little bit better? I think that's a better way to put it. But now, Van Rossum could hypothetically allow for something called Laos. Now, I've mentioned this a bunch of times before, but this is crucial to understand, kind of the importance of Van Rossum and what role it could play for Cardano moving forward. So I think, yeah, I'm going to say it. But again, the mainnet of Laos is going to allegedly bring tremendous scalability when it comes to Cardano, but the building blocks need to start off first, right? So the foundation has to be laid in place, and that is through the Van Rossum hard fork. We're seeing this right now in 2026. I didn't see it back then. So the levels, yes, in terms of the price is basically at 2017 levels right now, but the fundamentals, I think, improved by a whole lot when compared to that. At least many times better, right, in terms of the fundamentals when compared to that moment. So if anything, it got better, yet the charts are lower. Yeah, I'm not going to complain about that. In real life, am I going to complain about my favorite pair of shoes having a discount? I don't know if I would. Now, it's different when it comes to this space. I'm just using that as a analogy in real life. But yeah, besides that point, though, when it comes to ADA, yeah, I mean, it's not doing the best in terms of price, but in terms of the fundamentals, I am seeing some hypothetical improvements. So when people like to ask me what's happening on Cardano, or what's happening with Cardano, I should say, well, they recently made a post explaining what exactly has gone on recently, or quite recently, I should say, when it comes to the foundation and just Cardano overall. So I thought it was pretty interesting. But yeah, I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward. I want to say thank you so much for watching.